1. I work for a convenience store that has a strict, always comply with muggers policy. I think because it's cheaper for them to deal with losing whatever's in the register than fighting a suit for an employee hurt defending it. I've worked here off and on for the last 5 years, and I've been in the store for 6 robberies. They're usually pretty straightforward. Guy comes in, give me the money. We do. They leave. We call the cops. The cops don't do anything. We have cameras, but this neighborhood has such bigger problems they never follow up on petty theft. One of those times, though, the kid didn't wear a mask, just a hoodie. Comes in with the hood up, young kid, couldn't have been more than 18, 20. He paces around for a while, I guess trying to get his nerve up. I figured he was an underage kid trying to work up the courage to buy some beer at first. It was really early in the morning, and we were the only people in the store. He approaches the register and says he has a gun, doesn't pull it out, was probably bluffing, and that he won't use it if I just give him money. Talking all tough about, don't try anything today, I'm not the one, etc. I pop open the register and he jumps behind the counter to take the money out. As he's doing this, an old woman comes in. Now I was getting really nervous because I don't want the old lady to be in a dangerous situation, but before I could react, she recognizes the kid. She runs up to him and goes, "Oh, Noah! Hello, dear, how are you?" And the kid just freezes behind the counter, hands full of cash. She's older and I guess deaf, so she's shouting, "I didn't realize you'd gotten a job. Good for you, dear. You know, I just saw your mama the other day and she didn't mention it." "No, I don't. Your mama never tells me anything." "I don't work." "Don't interrupt me, hon. Your mama never tells me anything." She's just chattering on, and she starts shopping. I'm just standing there frozen, waiting to see how this plays out, with the guy still behind the register with me. The kid was almost a foot taller than me, and I didn't want to get into an altercation if I could help it. She goes through and she's shopping and she goes, "Noah, hon, could you help me reach this, please?" And he's like, "I don't..." "What, are you going to make me beg here?" So he goes over and Deadass starts trying to help her get things from high shelves. "Is this really the best price you've got for this?" Then he's like, yeah. While he's doing this, I call the cops. I think he knows I must have been doing that because he's beyond antsy. At one point he tried to bail out. She was like, "Hold on, don't clock out yet, I'll just be a minute. I want to see you at work, this is so exciting, you're all growing up." So he's standing there, awkward and panicked, trying to make a decision. Eventually she goes to check out, and I scan her items, keeping an eye on him. "Oh, can Noah check me out? He's my friend's son. I didn't know I was visiting him at work. This is so exciting." Wanted to keep things cool until she was out of the store on the off chance the kid did have a weapon of some kind or wasn't stable. I just stepped aside and let him check her out. He didn't really know how to use the scanner or anything, but he got through it. She leaves. Once she's walked out, he runs out of the store and jumps into a car. He didn't get any money from us. It was another 20 minutes before the cops got there, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But that was the most memorable robbery for me, as robberies go. 2. During my last year in college, I had the unpleasant experience of working as a salesman in an auto repair store for a national chain that has since gone out of business. You probably got their magazines by mail when you were younger. It wasn't a particularly enjoyable experience, but I needed the job to pay for rent and utilities. Fast forward to the final month of my time there. We were understaffed with just myself, one other salesman, the manager, and a very part-time worker able to work as a salesman. Sundays had much shorter business hours, were much more relaxed, and generally became the day I would open and close the store. This would not be one of those days. After starting like a regular Sunday, all hell broke loose midday. We quickly stopped taking tickets as we booked through the rest of the day. The mechanics working that day, though, were extra motivated and were pumping out tickets very quickly. It got to the point that we were actually going to have time at the end of the day for another ticket or two. This was an omen. Lo and behold, an older woman calls asking for prices on tires for her SUV. One of the tasks corporate had would be to randomly call stores and ask for prices on tires, so there was a prompt we had to go through or we'd get a failing grade and a nice talk with the manager. I go through the charade of getting the prices for the tires she wanted, in what was quickly becoming a very pricey ticket, worth a lot in commission to both me and the mechanic. She then asked if we could do it this afternoon, which left me with the critical decision of jamming in one last ticket that would make us money or taking the final hour or so of the day off. I chose money, and I chose wrongly. The moment the woman, who was probably in her late 30s or early 40s, stepped through the door, I knew it wasn't going to be pleasant. She reeked of entitlement, and it was clear her mother had called to make the appointment and was buying everything. I get the keys, tell her to be back by close, get all the necessary paperwork done, and leave it for the mechanics. This is where I made the fatal mistake. We were trained to get the tires for the vehicle ASAP. This was because it was not rare for the number of tires the computer would say we had in inventory, and the amount we actually had not to match. In this case, it said we had exactly the 4 tires she needed. By the time I could get away from customers and go get the tires, the SUV was already on the lift. Fear quickly set in as I could only find 3 of the tires. This was an all-wheel drive car, and it was company policy that we had to change all 4 tires or none. I shouted to the mechanic to help, frantically hoping one of them was badly misplaced. The mechanic, who had been at the desk when this customer had come in, realized the gravity of the situation, as we could not find the 4th. I then had the dreaded task of calling this lady and notifying her of the news. She took it very pleasantly, was understanding, and happily left for home. Obviously, I'm joking. She immediately started yelling at me through the phone before I could even explain the options. We could have a 4th tire in at 8 a.m. the next morning and just do the service then. That wouldn't work. She demanded I call other shops around town to get her an appointment elsewhere. I was not her mother, so that wasn't happening. No resolution would appease her. I informed her she could get her car whenever, and she informed me she was on her way and that this wasn't finished. I hurriedly went back to pull the SUV out. When I went to take the key out of the pouch, it fell to the ground and broke into multiple pieces. Everything is awful at this point. The mechanic and I, in slacks and a polo, are crawling around a greasy garage floor looking for pieces of the key. We find 2/3 of it, but cannot find the final piece. Then we hear the woman enter the garage screaming for us. I instruct her to wait inside while I pull her car out. The key would stay together enough to turn the car on, so I say screw it. I'm pulling the car out, and I tell the mechanic to keep looking. As I get out of the car, though, a miracle happened. The final piece was sitting on the floorboard. One good thing happened that day. Surprisingly, the woman was not at the desk, but my mortified part-time co-worker was. Before he can explain what happened, I distantly hear the woman screaming on the other side of the store for a manager. Turns out she was not happy with the answer that no manager was available in the auto center, and began marching through the store screaming for a manager. The actual store manager did not have anything to do with the auto center, but did answer to her beck and call. There was nothing we could do for her at this point other than to escort her out of the store, which finally happens after more shouting and screaming. At this point, it's well after closing time for our auto center, which closed an hour earlier than the regular store, but the store manager needs some explanations as to what just happened. I gave my end of the story, the manager doesn't explain much to me, and says we'll talk tomorrow. I come in the next day, and my auto center manager immediately directs me into his office. He now needs a full explanation. After I finished, he asks if I left any detail at all out. I said no. He then informs me that the lady told the manager that me and the mechanic made multiple fat jokes to her when she came in. I'm also a fat ass, so that one made no sense. He also said that she said we threatened to kill her. Another baseless claim. It turns out that she was screaming to everyone in the store in the time between me pulling out her car and re-entering the store, hence the mortified look on my co-worker's face when I returned. She literally marched down every aisle of the store screaming for a manager because we were threatening to kill her. My jaw was on the floor as my manager explained this. He asked if I did either of those things. At this point, I had worked with him long enough that I just asked him if he thought I would do either of those things. That was a satisfactory answer, and my manager just stated that he had to get an official statement from me. I informed him, had I not already told my manager an end date, and both her and the other full-time salesman hadn't planned vacations around that date, that I would be quitting today after that. We exited his office to the part-time worker who asked to speak with the manager and handed in his 2 weeks' notice. I finished working there a few weeks later. Within a year, the whole store was closed by corporate, and within a few years after that, the whole chain declared bankruptcy. It's my only job in retail, and absolutely never again. 3. So a bit of background to this utter fluke of circumstances. About a year ago, I moved back into my childhood home with my pawpaw in the volunteer state. He's a really chill guy that is just lonely because all of his kids are 40+ years old, and the only people that he talked to regularly before I came back were in the same boat. My return was shortly before the pandemic started, so he's been cool with me staying rent-free until I find a full-time job. So we've largely been living off food stamps to get by. That being said, we make a serious grocery run about once a month. The same night, I try to make a monthly steak night so we can feel like we live off more than rice, canned soup, and coupons. I spent roughly 12 years living in a household of folks practically obsessed with cooking, so I'm fairly good at it. But it's not a one-stop shop, so we do end up taking a whole day to get everything. And we always end up stopping by Wally World for the blue cheese crumbles I adore on my steak. Melt in saucepan with sautéed mushrooms and caramelized onions with half a cup of half-and-half milk. Wonderful topping sauce, just go easy on the salty seasonings, a light sprinkling of garlic powder at most. Only sear steak in cast iron pan before baking with toppings in oven at 475, for 2 to 5 minutes depending on how rare you like it. On this particular day though, I had just come back from our local Amazon location trying to get a job, so I was dressed in nice shoes, my best blue jeans, and a blue polo shirt. If you cannot guess where this is going by now, then you haven't read enough of these stories. Though to the credit of the managers at this location, at least the fine, brave people working there, now wear uniform vests with the company logo on the back, most likely to avoid situations like this. I meet Pawpaw there, and we start shopping, as we stock up on instant ramen and yakisoba. He and I aren't talking much, shopping like a well-oiled machine. We both know what the house needs and our budget. After a while, I hear footsteps shopping from behind, and so I step a bit further from the center of the aisle, so whoever it is can pass. When they get close, I step in front of Pawpaw's buggy to let whoever it is pass. Then I feel like something out of a horror movie. 4 or 5 hard edges moving against the back of my neck without warning. So, like most sane people, I assume something is trying to sting or bite me, and slap the back of my neck as hard and fast as my reflexes allow. Feeling my hand connect with something large, my reaction is to attempt to grab and throw it, twisting my head around to try to see what was on me. What I see is this frail-looking woman in her 80s looking at me in shock. The fingers of her right hand caught in my grip. I instantly let her fingers go and turned to face her, trying to lighten the mood with a wisecrack of, "Not your best idea ever, eh?" She narrows her eyes at me, and with her cheeks and lips sagging like an English bulldog, she grunts at me.
"Excuse me?"
"You're excused," I reply out of habit, gesturing she is free to get by us. And no, I wasn't oblivious to her temper. I was just ignoring it so we could all move on with our day. Apparently, she doesn't appreciate my efforts, and smacks me on the arm. Not like it hurt or anything. I'm 27 as of last month, 6 foot high, and the better part of 300 pounds. She looked like a strong breeze would snap her in half, so it had about as much effect as if she had swung a loaf of bread at me. Off to my right, I can hear Pawpaw go, "Hey now." He goes ignored as the old lady says,
"Is that any way to treat a lady, young man?"
"I'm sorry," I reply as I rub the scratch marks in my neck. "If I see one, I'll be sure to ask." Her jaw falls open at that, and she actually kicks me just below the knee. That one I actually felt, and I scowl at her. "Geez, lady, save it for the ring, okay, Mrs. Tyson?" The first boxer that came to mind at the time.
"You are very rude. Where's your manager?"
I blink a few times, and I actually smile as it clicks what's happening. I watch a lot of channels on YouTube to read out stories like these while I'm busy with other stuff. So in my mind, what started as a scare just turned into a chance for some fun. Tahiti, maybe? He has a timeshare there, I reply as I smirk. She huffs and rolls her eyes. still massaging her fingers.
Oh, whatever. Just give me your name and a number to report you.
My papa tries to cut in. Ma'am? She all but hollers,
Name and number!
Dramatically, I put my hand to my chest. Oh, but ma'am, that is so improper. I'll have you know my wife looks very poorly on me just giving out my number to other women. I'm single, but just want to watch her mentally trip over herself. She does an impression of a fish with her mouth before something catches her eye down the aisle.
You, come here!
I look and I see an actual employee heading our way. I smirk and then blatantly stage whisper to him as loud as I can, Run away! Run away! If looks could kill, that lady would have turned me into fine red mist. The employee endured a few minutes of her chastising me to him, while I look as bored as I can be. He looks at me and tells her,
He doesn't work here.
Spotting a chance, I loudly and sarcastically say over the lady's retort, Oh, come on, Jimmy. His name tag said his name was Max. Don't tell me you forgot me. It's me. Ben Take It. Middle name, Doverand. My papa bursts out in wheezing coughs that passes for his laughter. He's the one that taught me that joke. So I ask Max, You know where I can get my papa some tea? The old lady seems to be catching on at this point, and so I am pointedly ignored, while she focuses on Max. As Papa and I quietly make our escape, he looks at me and says, Kid, you're effing weird. I glance back at the lady down the aisle and reply to him, Better than crazy. He just shrugs with a nod, and we carry on with our shopping. 4. This was 2 years back during the holiday season. I'd been working for a couple of years at this particular home decor store, and I always felt bad about how most of the management didn't seem to want to help the seasonals. Cue me pitifully holding many of their hands through what was not my problem. They really weren't told or shown how to do much of anything at all, for the approximate 3 months they were there during the dreaded busy holidays. I really felt bad for the teenagers and the middle-aged moms, just wanting an easy minimum-wage job. It wasn't what they got. The night of the incident, I was tasked with stocking and organizing the clearance shelves, which was far away from the front registers as anything the store could be, although the whole store could be walked across within 3 minutes. It was nearing close when I noticed a seasonal was struggling to help a customer, don't remember with what specifically, so I was sort of quietly telling the seasonal what she could do. I believe the customer was looking for an item that wasn't on the floor, so I told the seasonal she could check the stock via the front register. Attempting to help my co-worker was apparently outrageously rude, as said the customer to the manager, who did not back me up. Figures. Apparently, I should have dropped what I'd been asked to do to fill seasonal work that the store was paying my co-worker to do. What really pissed me off and still makes me simmer about it so long afterward was how fake nice the customer had been toward the seasonal. The whole thing was just so odd. Like, who gets mad at someone for trying to help? Even through El Chronos season, where I miss everything else from the outside world, I don't miss the rude treatment I experienced there. 5. I'll start out by explaining briefly that we've just moved to the area we're living in. I'm extremely new to the area, and it makes me a little more nervous than normal. I am legally deaf. That doesn't mean I can't hear anything at all, but you definitely gotta speak slowly and very loud, especially with this pandemic and these masks. I can lip read really well, but with the masks, I'm at a loss, unfortunately. I was wandering the local Walmart. I am dressed in a bright yellow shirt and a pair of yoga pants, and I'm wearing my DOT-approved motorcycle helmet with the visor down instead of a mask. Masks are mandatory, but they never seem to mind letting me in as long as I keep my visor down while I shop. That makes me even more deaf than usual. My helmet is bright white. Not hard to tell I don't work there. There is no mistaking that I don't work at Walmart. I have my hearing aids in, but they tend to have a wide V effect with 3 separate mics, and I don't hear people behind me very well, if at all. It just mutes background noise so I can focus on what's in front of me. Even with the hearing aids, I have serious difficulty hearing people with my helmet on. I clearly have a few items in my hands, sandwich meats and bread. I am following the arrows they put down, and am squatting down, looking for a can of Campbell's mushroom soup. Suddenly, there is a very aggressive repeated smack against my shoulder. I actually screamed, because I hadn't seen her come up behind me, and was not expecting anyone in this pandemic to be close enough to actually touch me. She scared the absolute hell out of me. I twisted and landed hard on my butt, partially landing on and squishing my bread. I can suddenly see this woman, and she is wearing her mask, gesturing wildly. I can hear the murmur of her voice, but with the visor down and my helmet on, I can't understand her properly. My hearing aids are pressed against the sides of the padding of my helmet and are moderately useless with the visor down. She doesn't react to the fact that I've fallen, just gestures wildly. And her voice is rising. I finally make out what I think is,
"Here is the mat fuel."
It's a weird way your brain fills in blanks. Where you can't hear someone or read their lips, I just shake my head and I say, I don't know. I know my response is muffled by my helmet because she keeps at it. While on my ass, I sign wildly, I don't know. All the while shrugging my shoulders and shaking my head hard. Unfortunately to her, maybe it looks like I'm saluting her, still on the ground. She says in an extremely loud voice, "If I can hear you and I'm wearing my danged helmet with the visor down, you're speaking extremely loudly."
"Where is the cat food?"
There is a man behind her wearing a mask who is socially distancing until she raised her voice. I see him approach quickly. He doesn't work there either. And I can hear him literally yell at her, "Again, if I can hear you, you are loud."
"Hey lady, don't touch her, what is wrong with you?"
This attracts the attention of nearby people, and thankfully 2 people who actually work there. I see blue shirts coming, and I just skirt back from the lady as she turns away from me and starts bickering with the man. I can't hear most of it, but I can definitely see it escalating. I stand up, step back further, and brush myself off. I pick up my sandwich meats, but the bread is a lost cause. One employee clearly tries to de-escalate the situation, and she is just shrill and gesturing madly. I can no longer hear the man, he's not raising his voice anymore. One of the staff standing beside me now, I turn to face her, and I think she's asking me if I'm okay. I shrug and throw a few signs. I'm deaf, sorry, don't know her. And I point aggressively at the lady who scared me. The man is explaining everything that happened to the other staff member. The second employee seems to understand that I'm deaf and just nods. She motions for me to step back further from the argument, and I do. And she puts herself between myself and the small knot of people. There's a brief, heated discussion, the employee shaking his head, some of which I can hear and some of which I can't. As the man speaks to the other staff, I can hear her briefly again something about "ever again." The lady is then actually escorted from the store, her card left behind by one staff member. I was super surprised by that. When all is said and done, it seems he saw the whole thing. Things quiet down quickly. The customer who intervened points at me and flashes the OK symbol most people know. Pointer, finger to thumb, 3 fingers out. I smiled and nodded. I signed and loudly said, "Thank you," before the Walmart employee led me back to the area to get new bread. I flashed the man the peace sign before he left, and signed "thank you" again before being led away. Please don't touch people in a pandemic. If someone doesn't seem to hear you, put your hand into and slowly step into their line of sight. They may be deaf. Bish, I clearly didn't work there. And for those wondering why the helmet, I typically carry a reusable mask with me. I have 6 cotton masks with multiple layers and filters in black that I wash and reuse. Today was the one day I did not, and yes, I take the blame for that 100%. I even have mask stretchers that fit my mask on the upper part of my head so as not to interfere with my hearing aids. I was doing laundry last night, as my masks are reusable, and thought for sure I still had one in my purse. Unfortunately, I did not. I would have respectfully understood if they deterred me from entering the store, as whereas it's a full face and full head helmet with a visor and dual shield, it doesn't equate to a mask, and boy does the visor fog up fast. I made even more so than usual to socially distance, and will definitely be more mindful of checking my purse in future for a mask before I leave instead of assuming I have one in there. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, number 101. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you yourself have a story you'd like to send in, be it fast food and retail, true scary, or anything else I happen to do, please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. And a word about true scary stories, every now and again, we'll go through a period where those stories are a bit thin on the ground, so just a heads up, they're not going away. I'll do them twice weekly when I'm able to get the stories. When I'm not, I'll do something else on one of those days. As it happens this week, I'm struggling to even get one made. Should be able to do tomorrow's, that's Wednesdays. Right now, the following Mondays is up in the air. If not, it will be Idiots in the Wild. But if I can pull a true scary together, then that's what I'll do. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.